Derby Day is on the horizon, and it's TalkNorwichCity tradition now to ease ourselves into it with a chat with Benjamin Bloom. I won't lie, we've already spoken this week. The nerves are bubbling over, and I'm sure that Ben will have a somewhat of a smile on his face throughout this as we discuss his table-topping Ipswich Town. I'm going to keep emphasising table topping because it's only the only way is down from this point, Ben, and hopefully it begins this Saturday. Look, last time we caught up would have been ahead of that game against Portman Road, and the journey for Ipswich from that point has been remarkable.
Well, I think the thing that needs to be said is that game took a lot out of Ipswich. If you look, the poor run that Ipswich went on, and the kind of, we talk about the emotions just going through the fans, and not the players. But I think there was a bit of a sense with that game and with the big build up and the opportunity in the first half to get 2 goals in front and then not doing it. And then you're behind at the start of the second half. I don't think there's a coincidence that, I know you can talk about suspensions and injuries after that, and that's obvious. And obviously played Leeds and Leicester twice, but I think that game did take a lot out of Ipswich, kind of from a mental point of view.
In terms of that game, I mean, it's safer to look forwards as opposed to back, but that's our most recent form line, I guess, to go off between these two clubs. And Norwich were in a sticky situation then, and we couldn't quite work out, could we, at the time, whether this was just Ipswich riding on a wave of momentum and if it would continue or not. But what was the sense around Portman Road at that stage? Because it felt like that was your moment to kind of end this unbeaten run. Look, if you care about it or not, but it is there. It's a fact. Was it a sense of disappointment or just happy to get away with something?
Well, look, given the last 15 years, you're always happy to not lose to Norwich. But as we've discussed, there's been so many draws anyway. They're I suppose they mean a lot in terms of the unbeaten streak from the other way around. But it was a big missed opportunity, wasn't it? Because in the first half, and I'm the biggest Nathan Broadhead proponent you'll get, but he could have had 2 or 3 goals, couldn't he? Bless him, in the first half. And there's a lot of seasoned, savvy Championship bastardery in the Norwich squad, and Duffy and McLean. It's sort of a backs to the wall performance, and Barnes as well, where you're like, they're possibly, I know, amazing players, but possibly the 3 worst technical football players in your. That's not fair on McLean, but the other lads, and they were the sort of most important players, organising everything. But yeah, it was a big missed opportunity, wasn't it?
And from that game on, I don't know how long the run lasted. It felt
1 win in 9, Jack.
1 win in 9. So
yeah.
For Norwich fans looking at Ipswich, we're going, brilliant. We've derailed them. It was just momentum carrying them to this point. There was a couple of injuries, and you strengthened really well in January by the looks of things. And then that winning run from that point on has been exceptional. What's been the I guess we will call it a turnaround, because 1 win in 9 is pretty alarming form. And then from that point on, no one can stop you.
Well, I think, and look, I would say this, I try and offset my implicit bias, but I would say that the general kind of base level, they've just gone back to where they were. And I know everyone makes a lot of injuries and suspensions, but particularly the game against QPR, and you've just played Leicester and gone hammer and tongue with Leicester and managed to get a draw right in the stoppage time there. And I think against QPR, there was like, if you wrote down Ipswich's best 11, I think like 6 of them were unavailable or something. And then, you know what it's like at Christmas, you play sort of Boxing Day and then the 28th or the 29th and then New Year's Day. Then went to Stoke, and then it was like, look, just get through these games. And they drew them both 0-0. So there was the George Hurst injury, which you've already rightly said, and Kiefer Moore comes in to cover George Hurst. So, yeah, look, no team is just going to win all season, are they? Ever. Especially not one that's come up from League One, for goodness sake. But it did feel a bit like that there were some mitigating factors. 2 games against Leicester in I hate that double. I don't know who you got quickly on December the 20th and then January the 16th. But the last team you want is one that's just come out of the Premier League or whatever. I've probably got the dates wrong. Someone will hammer me in the comments for that. It was around that sort of time. So there was I'm trying not to be deluded about it, but there was a sense of, right, loads of mitigating factors. Morsey, who I know you think's been really influential, he had a suspension then. So maybe it's just come back to where it was. Perhaps if that's not too sort of overly self-assured thing to say.
No, it makes sense. Let's bring it up to the modern day then. And Ipswich currently top, Norwich sixth. Huge amounts on the line for both teams. And I suspect you've asked similar questions, Ben, to when you've spoken to previous Ipswich players or management of whenever you're in a successful season, or I guess the flip side as well, and you're bubbling along and you know you're going quite well, and then there's a game where the dressing room, whether they say it or not, goes, it's on. We can start to believe. And when I was watching your game against Southampton on Easter Monday, I looked at it and I went, that's probably the moment for those supporters where you go, okay, this is now what was a great journey and a fun journey. And, you can start to dream to go in, oh boy, there's something big on the line here. Was there that feeling in Portman Road?
I mean, I wasn't there. I was working in the afternoon, so my season ticket was sat empty. But the people who were there are telling me it's top 3 games they've ever seen at Portman Road. And We're talking to people who've seen Ipswich beat Barcelona and, all the stuff that we don't need to go into in the 80s. And there's obviously the playoff semi-final against Bolton, which was 5-3, which was, you'll never see anything like that ever again, an extra time and all that drama. It feels like, though, Jack, there's been about probably 5 to 10 of those moments through this season where, no, seriously, though. I mean, I remember going back to the first Southampton game where you've made 5 changes and you've gone away to an ex-Premier League team and you've won. And it's like, hang on a minute, that's not how this division works at all. And
is this just your narrative against Russ Martin here? Because be slightly
mate, I love Russ. I love Russ Martin, and he's got obviously Matt Gill, who we're well connected with as well, next to him. So I have no narrative against Russ Martin, who's a very handsome and powerful man and a fine football manager. And for 50 minutes of that game you're referencing, his side were the best side anyone's seen at Portman Road. But you must have had it as a Norwich fan where there's those lovely moments, particularly after an away game, where you've had a great result and there's a good away end there, and the squad comes over and you share the moment together, and it's like, right, this feels really, really, everyone's together, and there's a great momentum. And there was, there's one of them at Watford as well at Christmas where you think, but we had all the parachute teams all in a row through November, ending with your lot at Norwich, which is so annoying that you go on a winless run after that, because we got through what we thought was a really, really difficult run. And there's been a few of those moments, but the messaging, as you'd imagine, coming out from McKenna is, oh, no, we're just doing our thing. There's no big turning points. Whereas I think everybody else watching, like yourself, is going, oh, that's a turning point.
He is the most incredibly calm and composed figure, McKenna, isn't he? I mean, I don't know if it's chaos within his head, but he certainly doesn't paint that picture. You obviously cover, Ipswich Town, and you're an Ipswich Town fan, but the Championship in general, Ben, and we spoke last time about David Vagner, and that discussion, I'm sure, will rumble on until a conclusion comes at whatever time that does. Are you surprised to see him in the hot seat for this game and taking Norwich forwards for the next couple of games at least?
It's a difficult one because I respect your opinion, and I took the temperature from your opinion when we spoke last time. So a lot of my opinion is essentially your opinion processed through me, if you know what I mean. But I know you watch intently. I know a lot of people disagree with you, and it's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just feel when the crowd turns, whatever the sporting director thinks or what have you, you need the home crowd, don't you? You can't be You know, you can't be sending players out in front of their home stadium and, you know, the crowd aren't having the manager. That just never ends well. But maybe this is going to be the one that everyone holds up now in the future and says, but what about Norwich and Vagner? Because he looked like he was dead and buried in that Blackburn game we've referenced many times. Look, I don't know what to make of it. Part of me thinks fair play to your club for saying, no, okay, he's our guy. We're gonna stick with him, and you know, the results have come round. And then part of me kind of agrees with you that the squad was never a 17th place squad, and they should have been better. And then think about the injuries, and that's another tick in Wagner's box. So you're right. And until we find out on round 46 where Norwich have finished, it's really, really a difficult one to judge. And to be right on the fence, I understand both points of view, and it's just purely going to be down on are they in the playoffs? Tick. Are they not in the playoffs? Cross. It's going to be that simple at the end of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Talk us through this Ipswich setup then, Ben, because you know I've watched plenty of Ipswich this season. I suspect lots of Norwich fans have, but we will have a more simplistic view on your squad and setup than you guys will. You know, you look at this Ipswich team. Well, I do, and I go, well, the strengths are never say die, score plenty of goals, a really strong spine, and a very shrewd head coach. And the weakness is probably concede too many. Talk us through that with a little bit more nuance.
I mean, the two things are linked together, aren't they? Because the openness is also a direct consequence of being attacking and scoring loads and loads of goals. Dare I say, Norwich 2018-19 scored loads, conceded loads, won the league. I'm not saying Ipswich are gonna win the league, but you know that what you give with one hand, you take away with the other sometimes. And unless you're Man City, you perfectly balance this attacking. What was that? There was like a Liverpool team who scored 83 and conceded 16 or something in the 70s. You know, you get the odd example of where it's both ends perfect. But no, very keen to pass the ball through the thirds. Very keen to be kind of lopsided, to get everything going through Leif Davis, the fullback, but always with the switch of play to Wes Burns, who unfortunately won't be there. It'll be Amari Hutchinson. So there's that type of thing. They've got a bit of a different, with Kiefer Moore instead of George Hurst, they can play a long ball into the big guy up front, whereas George Hurst was more a runner and occupy. And I dare say the way the other game went, and I know you guys play different at home than you do away, could have done with someone like Kiefer Moore in the other game. Absolutely, just to get out and stop what was a decent, stiff Norwich defensive shape. But yeah, we can pretty much say Cladkey, Davis, Burgess, Wolfenden, Clark or Tuanzebe, we don't know. Morsey, might be Taylor, might not be Luongo. He kind of tired in the last game. Chaplin, Broadhead, I hope, but others prefer, maybe a Caden Jackson running, Hutchinson, and we got our fingers crossed that Kiefer Moore is going to be trotting out. If I were a Norwich fan, and not that we ever want to see football players hurt and unavailable, if I were a Norwich fan, I would be pleased if I didn't see Kiefer Moore coming out, because that does seem to weaken the team.
You mentioned Kiefer Moore there, and I guess it will probably be Duffy and Gibson, the centre-back pairing for Norwich, because Jakob Sorensen kind of limped off against Leicester. Two very different centre-backs. Jakob Sorensen, technical, quite small. Duffy, bit of a lump, can head it clear. But whenever
I've watched, that affectionately, yeah,
of course, in the most loving way possible. This new lad for you, is it El Hamadi?
Al Hamadi, yeah.
El Hamadi looks. I mean, I know he's come from League Two, and it's a big step up, but looks a tidy player. I mean, is it concerning that it's going to be maybe him instead of Moore?
I love him, and he's going to be a cult hero, but it is. This is a big game that needs big game savvy and experience, and the sort of the players you mentioned there, if it is Gibson and Duffy, they know their way around. They know how to wind up a lad who's been played in League Two, who's not been in a cauldron before. So I don't want to be patronising Al Hamadi, but I would much rather him coming in, with 15 minutes to go as a bit of a grenade into the game. And I think Kiefer Moore be a bit more of a heavyweight against a heavyweight at the back. But if he's not fit, he's not playing, and we don't know about his back, do we?
Do you think the fortunes of Ipswich this season, in terms of whether you go up automatically or finish in the playoffs, rest on Saturday's game?
No, but I can't come on here and say that the previous game took a lot out of them emotionally, etc., and then say that's not a thing this time, because it obviously is. And I don't know how you feel about it. Whether you think the away game is a better one to be playing because you don't have the whole home crowd behind you, and can you quiet the Norwich crowd down? Can you turn the Norwich crowd by getting on top? I don't know. That's open to debate, but you would hope that this side has enough resilience. I mean, for God's sake, they had a galling defeat against Cardiff where they played pretty well. Cardiff didn't have a shot for like 40 minutes and then scored 2 set plays in stoppage time. You've lost the game, and they won the next game 6-0. So they've bounced back really well. So you'd hope they would be able to do so. But you and I have discussed this. It's just it's a horrible game. I always liken the Championship to the Grand National compared to the Premier League being a flat race. You know your horse racing, don't you? And this game particularly is the Grand National, isn't it? It's a complete chaos. The fences are 20% higher than everything else. You've got to go around twice. Half the horses won't even make it. And obviously, we agree with care of horses in horse racing, of course, before anyone gets to me at that. But half the horses are done by the first fete. It's just a minefield, this game. Yeah. A slog, isn't it? Mentally and physically as well. And you just got to hang around and stay in it. And I don't know which side that suits better.
And look, in terms of league position at the moment, you are going up automatically. It may well stay that way. And I must say, I would fancy your chances to do so. But if you were to fall out and finish third, and it looks likely that we'll finish sixth, a playoff semi-final looms upon us. And I know we've had it before, but it feels slightly different this time around. We filmed our podcast this morning. Chris and I was, saying that it's possibly the worst thing that we could imagine.
Agreed.
Ipswich would go into it, probably heavy favourites, but it's still the thought of it. And God forbid we meet at Wembley. I mean, I just couldn't think of anything worse. You'd be going in favourites, but I suspect it would be a similar feeling for you guys.
Look, I'm a very staunch debunker of the idea of the playoffs being a lottery. I hate it when people say they're a lottery. Do the research. They're not. But it is it is tournament football, Jack. And with everything that goes into an East Anglian derby, I don't buy that Ipswich are heavy favourites. Obviously, the league table. I think when you get to tournament football and there's one game at Carrow Road and one game at Portman Road, I think that's a great equaliser. It being a local derby. Do you know what I mean? And David Vagner, he nailed the playoffs with Huddersfield, didn't he?
Yeah, that's true.
They got through on 2 penalty shootouts, and I think famously they didn't score a goal because Sheffield Wednesday's goal was the goal against Sheffield Wednesday was an own goal. So he has got form for tournament football. And okay, it was 16, 17, 15, so I can't remember 7 or 8 years ago now, but he's got form for it. And oh man, I mean, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, Jack. And I always remember seeing a documentary about Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho, and there was one season where they played like 5 or 6 times, and they said that just draining it, just took it out of Guardiola because they had them in the Champions League, and I think Barca might have won the Champions League and Real Madrid won the. But he said it was completely draining. And God, can you imagine, Jack? One game in April and then another 2 in May, and the other 2 are tournament football as well. Mate, honestly, I don't want it. Oh.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling the same way. I was hoping you weren't going to go, yeah, I'm really up for that, and are confident. Yeah, in the kind of 6 or 7 years I've known you, I've yet to get you off the fence on anything really, and I'm hoping to pull you off the fence.
You make me
with
sound
this
like
one.
I'm dishonest.
No, not at all. You're just incredibly professional and weigh
Balanced,
things up.
hopefully,
Yeah, balanced. You must be feeling confident coming into Saturday because you've been on an incredible run of form. You've seemingly weathered every storm thrown your way. You will be favourites with the bookies, who are very often correct. I mean, you must be coming into this one with a degree of confidence.
Absolutely not. This is the East Anglian.
Are you being honest? Are you being honest?
Look,
yeah.
Can I be completely honest? I have a knot in my stomach even talking about it. So look, it might be ridiculous football fan emotions. I can never be confident against Norwich. It's just the way it is. There's always that. But I remember even discussing with you in 2018-19 where there's Buendia and Pookie against like the worst Ipswich side in 20 years or whatever. And there's always that little bit in your mind of, oh God, what if they just nick a goal on it? What if you get one of those freak games where 25 shots to 1 and it's 1-0? So, Jack, I have every confidence in the club and the team and certainly the manager at the moment. But it's the East Anglian derby. It's a thing all of its own. So, yeah, I have belief in the side and I know what they're going to do and how they're going to try and play. But look at the last game. It was all amped up and you weren't playing well. Ipswich were playing well. The first half is kind of completely dominant. And there's Johnny Rowe at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. And, there's your confidence. You're 2-1 down and we're going to lose to Norwich again. So, look, I promise. I utterly, utterly promise. And you speak to any Ipswich fan who's been through what we've been through, even that game at Carrow Road where you take the lead in the 89th minute and still don't win. Tell me that my lack of confidence is that I've been burned too many times by this fucking game, honestly. Excuse my language.
It was we did well to get 22 minutes in without our first expletive. No, look, I appreciate the honesty, and I think Norwich fans are feeling the exact same way. I guess if you're an Ipswich fan, you would assume that Norwich fans, after the kind of decade of dominance, that we would be confident, but it's certainly not that way, and it's never been that way. In the nicest possible way of this sounding, I hope that this is the last time we speak this season, Ben, and we haven't got the playoffs to go through. You don't need shout outs anymore. You're far bigger than we are, but I will put the link to Ben's channel down in the description below. It is a massive game on Saturday, and we will see you there for it. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.